the Early Weigh-In Podcast. This week we've got UFC Vegas 42. It's a big-time matchup in the featherweight division where we see Max Holloway taking on Yair Rodriguez. Max is coming off the hellacious beating back in January he put on Cater, and Yair's been out for about 2 years now. We got two of the best strikers in the division going to be locked across from each other on Saturday. When you look down through the card, there's actually some pretty good fights scattered throughout here, but my only, knock on the card is just really the way it's ordered. You got Felicia Spencer all the way up there taking on Leah Letson. You've got the lowest of heavyweights in the co-main event. You think the UFC would have learned from that already. And then in the prelims, Thiago Moises was just headlining a 5-round fight card with Islam, and he's now shoved down in the prelims. In my opinion, Baeza and Khaos Williams could very well be the co-main event here on Saturday. Really the only knock on it, man, but, we got some fights to watch. Prelims start at noon Eastern or something like that on Saturday. And my boy Max is in the main event here, so I really can't complain. Just wish our boy Colby would have came through for us last week.
At plus 250, I'd play it all over again. Mm-hmm. I know that there are some people that are making arguments for Colby. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think that the rightful guy won in Usman, but I can understand why 3, 4, and 5 was close.
Absolutely.
Then we go into Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang. Felt really good about that one. Do wish we would have hit it harder, but it's tough.
It was 2-2 going into the fifth.
It was 2-2 going into the fifth, and I think there's a better argument for Zhang than there is for Colby. Mm-hmm. Then the Frankie Edgar versus Marlon Vera fight.
Close, man.
It was close. I don't know how the judges saw it. I know us backing Edgar, I had it up 2-0 for Edgar. But I know that the judges might not have saw it that way. Right. The Gaethje-Chandler fight, absolute war. Glad
that went to decision.
I know, right? Absolute toughness shown by Michael Chandler, and his stock went up even though he got a loss.
Yeah, he did.
Then we had the Gian Villante versus Chris Barnett. You talked about low-level heavyweights in our co-main. That's about as low level as it got, and we paid the price for trying to pick a side right there. Man. For what it's worth, we get Chris Barnett to fade again in the future.
Please give me a line like that with another heavyweight.
Any other heavyweight. Then we had the hedge on this card where we played Alex Pereira wins by TKO at minus 110, and then we played Michailidis by submission at plus 1400. Thought we were going to cash on that plus 1400, but we still profited. Happy that we found a way to hedge that spot and come out profitable either way. Then the Bagdasaryan under 1.5 rounds. Tough one, We tried to fade the guy in Souza who came in overweight. We thought Bagdasaryan was a bad matchup. It was going to stay on the feet. But you mentioned it earlier. It seemed like Bagdasaryan never really got out of first gear, and it hurt him. Just kind of played into Souza's game plan. Then we had Osborne inside the distance.
Kind of looked good in round 1. He's touching him up a little bit. But, man, come round 3, I was honestly sweating it.
All right. I was thinking that it might have been Vergara inside the distance come round 3. But not our greatest night. We ended up going minus 2.7 units, which kind of stopped the rolling ball that we had. But we're definitely going to look to come back on it this week. I know we have a couple of leans already this week, but we haven't made any plays. I think once we go through this card, we'll probably have some picks for you guys.
Absolutely.
Our first fight of the night starts off in the light heavyweight division where we see Kennedy and Nzechukwu versus Daun Jung. A really good fight to start off the prelims. Kennedy, he's earned himself an impressive 9-1 record with his sole loss coming to the Bear Jew in his debut. But he's now strung together a 3-fight win streak, and not in too impressive fashion, in my opinion. Sure, you look down his record, and those last 2 wins are by finish, but I honestly think that both of those are more of a testament towards like his durability than his actual skill set. Turns out in the light heavyweight division that cardio and durability can take you pretty far. He trains out of Fortis MMA with Saif Saud, and I can appreciate that he's under 30 still. And trying to make improvements, but I'm not seeing too much. Where on the flip side, Daun Jung's only 27 years old and making leaps and bounds of improvements every single fight. And a fight that you can look at it is the William Knight fight, where he starts incorporating these takedowns that we hadn't really seen in the past. And I truly think he's got Kennedy kind of beat everywhere here. He's got the cleaner striking and the wrestling advantage. And I know a lot of people want to crucify him for that Sam Alvey fight, but that's Sam Alvey for you, man. That's a young Daun Jung. And if that's the worst blip you have in your last 14 fights, I think you're going to be okay in the UFC. Oddly enough, I see this one going to the judges' scorecards, and I'm more than happy in taking Jung as a slight favorite.
Yeah, man. I honestly don't know how much I could add to it because I'm all the way with you on everything there. I really like Jung here. I think his price tag is awesome. I like him by more than likely decision, and you can get the fight goes to decision around even money. So it's another play that I really like here. Both guys have kind of been money makers for us. You know, we cashed on Nzechukwu when he was fighting Carlos Ulberg. He just basically withstood an ass beating and come back and won. And then we backed Jung pretty heavily at a pick'em price tag against William Knight. And man, you're right. He came out, added so many new aspects, wrinkles to his game. Those takedowns, I like you said, I definitely see improvements there as well with Kennedy. I always considered him as like the exception to the Nigerian wave. You know, you've got Francis, a champion, Usman, a champion, Izzy, a champion, even Sadiq Yusuf's a fringe top 10, 15. This guy on the other hand, for me, you know, like you said, he's pretty lucky to even have a win in the UFC. The Stosic, the nut shots and everything, the point deductions, the reason Kennedy wins that one. And then you pretty much touch on the other two. It's a testament to his opponents just basically gassing out, you know, and him coming back late, where I don't think that's going to be an issue for Jung. I think he's going to easily be there for the full 15 minutes. I favor him on the feet. Seeing the new wrinkles he's added to the game, I do favor him if he wants to try to take this down and mix in a couple takedowns. Yeah, man. Jung, TKO decision. I think we should just play his money line straight up. Next up, we're in the lightweight division where we see Marc Diakiese, who's 14-4, taking on Rafael Alves, who's 19-10. With Diakiese, he looks to have switched things up, spent a whole lot of time there at All Stars MMA, and looks to be training alongside, the new sensation Hamzat, Gus in there and stuff like that as well. And the dude's only 28 years old. He's got a phenomenal kickboxing background. To add these wrinkles and new improvements to his game, I'm expecting a very much improved Marc Diakiese to come out here on Saturday. I think going to have, obviously, like we know, massive advantage on the feet here. I think how heavy Rafael Alves is on that lead leg, the calf kick of Marc Diakiese is going to have, it's going to be a shot that he should really look to land here. With Alves, MMA Masters, he got the Contender Series win down at featherweight, but he's, more or less, Rafael Alves is known for coming in 14 pounds over in that Sabatini fight, and it's kind of shadowed a whole lot of other stuff. He did give Demir, I don't want to say a close fight, but in the first, the very first round, he did kind of tag Demir. Rafael Alves is going to push forward, and he's going to try to put Diakiese, on his back foot. That's how he's going to beat him. You got to crowd the kicker. I think Rafael Alves, although he does have, quite a few losses by submission, I think he's going to have a big, jiu-jitsu advantage here if he is able to get the fight down to the mat. You see Wagner Rocha in the past finish him with leg kicks. That's one of the reasons I think that calf kick should be a home run shot for Marc Diakiese. Diakiese by TKO decision, double chance there on one of those apps if you can snag it. But yeah, man, I would honestly like to play Diakiese straight up here. I think he's got Rafael Alves covered.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was able to snag Diakiese at minus 160 earlier in the week, and it seems like people are just piling on. So I know that we're going to hit it as well. This is a really sneaky spot where I think the fight doesn't go the distance at plus money is a decent line. You touched on Alves. That Ismagulov decision loss was the first ever decision in his 10 losses. He's the type
takes everybody to decision.
And that's Demir's fight right there. He's the type of fighter where he goes out on a shield, and Diakiese, he's got the type of power to really change a fight. And Alves, you touched on his BJJ. I couldn't agree more. If this fight does get to the ground, he's got the strength to just kind of squeeze on submissions, even if they're not in all the way, and still get that finish. Honestly, the level of competition that Diakiese's fought versus Alves is a dead giveaway on who's the better fighter. But I think when you accompany that with his length and his speed, I think he'll be able to find holes on the feet in Alves's kind of one-punch style of attack. You talked about Diakiese taking about a year off. I really, really like that. 28 years old, training with Khamzat. I think that all the upside is on Diakiese here. He's had a really tough run with the people that he's fought in the UFC.
Hooker,
right, and not getting finished by Hasbrat and Fiziev is a huge testament to his durability. I think that Diakiese's got him beat at below a minus 200, I love playing Diakiese, but I also think that you can somewhat hedge by going fight doesn't go the distance, because Alves does have that one-shot KO power, right, that lock up a submission and finish it type of fight-ending ability.
Yeah, I really like that we're both on the side of Diakiese. Probably look to playing him, and that doesn't go the distance. I really like that prop. I'm surprised it's even plus money, to be honest with you. I think this is one of the few fights of the night that we could potentially see a finish on.
Mm-hmm. We move on to the women's flyweight division, where we see Courtney Casey taking on Liana Jojua. I can't believe the confidence on either side that I'm hearing online for either of these girls. I think it's a mixture of people who can't admit that Courtney Casey's just an okay fighter, even on her best day, and then a bunch of Jojua simps. And
I know which side you're on.
And yeah, I guess that I'd definitely lean towards the Jojua simp side. Casey's one of these fighters that's shown over and over again in her career that she is willing to accept being on her back and give up rounds. Doesn't really matter who her husband is, what training camp she's in. That is a hole that she has not been able to patch since entering the UFC 6 years ago and 13 fights ago. Jojua is not good. I will blanketly say that. She is not good, but she is young. And I think her taking a year off of competition can only be a good thing when you're only 26 years old. So I am expecting to see some improvements from her. Unless Jojua comes out as a completely different fighter, I imagine she's going to try and get this to the ground, which opens up a bunch of holes for both of these girls. Both these girls, you look down their career, it can be summed up in armbar from guard. I honestly think that if and when this fight gets to the ground, there will be a mistake that even a decent white belt could take advantage of. So I'm going to be playing this fight ends by submission. That line hasn't come out yet, but I'm expecting to get like a plus 400.
So I'm not like super eager to play Courtney Casey at minus 200, but I 100% think Courtney Casey is the side here. And also cannot believe you simp over that belly button bruiser, man. Courtney Casey, she's almost just as pretty, in my opinion, to Liana Jojua. I just don't see it. Courtney Casey, she is back out of the MMA lab. I think her and her car seem to have solved that issue with the coach and stuff going on there, so that's nice to see. But she doesn't have the prettiest record, man. She's 9-9, but I think it's it's similar to Randa Marcos, and it's like she's fought just such a bulk of that division and seen a whole lot of competition that Liana Jojua is just not seen yet. Jojua, in my opinion, doesn't really offer much than the freaking armbar from guard. She doesn't. It's not like she has the wrestling of some of these other girls to put Courtney Casey on her back. She basically relies on other girls taking her down, like Diana Belvita did, and then finding the armbar from guard. So if it's I don't think Courtney Casey should play into that, but I do think in the clinch, in the grappling situation, Courtney Casey is a whole lot bigger, a whole lot stronger of the two. And while it's on the feet, I think she should chop with the legs to Jojua. She, sling the right hand. Jojua does not get her head off the center line very much whatsoever. One thing on the Jojua side I do like to see is she got the visa issues fixed, and she's in Vegas at Syndicate MMA. So she's working with JoJo Calderwood. She's working with Jeon Kim, with Roxanne Modafferi. So being young, there's definitely wrinkles and stuff she could be adding to her game. Where, like you said, I think we've pretty much seen the finished product of Courtney Casey. But when I see her losing to freaking Sarah Moras, whether it's at 135 or not, Sarah Moras is she flat out dominated Jojua, man, from start to finish, and ran right through her once they got on the mat, and that's where Jojua is supposed to be good. And you watch her just get sliced right through guard, straight to half guard, straight to mount, and just pounded from the top. And there's just nothing I've really seen from Jojua that I really, really like. Whereas Casey has fought majority of that division. Again, not eager to lay minus 200, but I think Courtney Casey is a better fighter. Next up in the featherweight division, we see Sean Woodson, who's 8-1, taking on Collin Anglin, who's 8-2. With Collin Anglin, he's out of Factory X Muay Thai. He comes to us off the Contender Series where he didn't get to finish, but he gets his contract because he comes through as like the plus 300 underdog that night. The guy's got a really good gas tank on him, really good feints on the feet. And he doesn't really have any problem making a fight boring. He'll put a dangerous striker up against the fence and put him on his back. If that's what it takes to win, he's going to be at a pretty significant height and reach disadvantage here to Sean Woodson, who's just got an unreal frame for the division. When I was looking online, Sean Woodson looks to be out of the Wolves Den training facility or something like that. He doesn't look like he's at Glory MMA with Khaos for this one. So, and I know Glory gets all the rep and stuff all the time, but it definitely is a better level of training that in the past than what I think he's got for this camp. Really good boxing, man. He keeps the jab busy. He's almost like, Nate Diaz style. He'd rather almost hit you with that 2-3 punch combination than that home run shot. But we saw in the Rosa fight, we saw in the Zalal fight, the grappling, the constant pressure, putting him on his back foot, it can eat at the gas tank. And for him to be like I think the second biggest favorite behind Max Holloway here on the card, showing me those cardio issues in the past, I don't know if I can get down to laying this kind of price tag or something on him in a parlay. But I think I'm going to side with him here to maybe do enough to get the decision. But I think you might see him getting it inside the distance.
Yeah, so his inside the distance line at plus 210, I think, is an absolute steal here. You talked about Woodson hasn't really earned a minus 300 against anybody because he's been making these fights a whole lot closer than they should be. That being said, he shows flashes of superstardom.
Yeah.
Like similarly to Sean O'Malley, he's someone who possesses that incredible length, speed, and athleticism that's an absolute X factor in the bantamweight division. And when breaking down Woodson, it's a given that he's going to have this size advantage and the speed. But with that, you talked about the punch combos. He was gifted pillow hands as well. And it's kind of one of those instances where he's going to have to set up that perfect shot to find the KO. I think that this fight could go down very similarly to the Terrence McKinney fight, where Woodson's setting up, he's finding that range, and will land that one knockout shot to put away Collin Anglin. For Anglin, he's going to have to get this fight to the ground, and he'll likely have that strength advantage he needs, but he's going to have to get inside those long punches of Woodson to do any damage at all. Right. If he takes that approach, a similar approach to Woodson like he did Melsick in that last fight, I think it'll probably end by KO, just like that one. And, I know up until this point, Anglin's been wildly successful in landing his takedowns. But, he's up against the 81% takedown defense of Woodson. And I eventually think Woodson will find that chin. And this is kind of his opportunity to prove that the hype is real and set him up for a bigger name to get him a higher status in the UFC.
I don't hate the inside the distance prop. You're definitely getting, a significant price difference. He's one of the biggest favorites on the card. Now you're getting plus 200 or more for him inside the distance. I heavily favor him here. I might keep that play in mind.
Yeah, and I have to also point out the padded record of Anglin, man. He truly hasn't faced anybody that's right. Good. I like the Morgan Sinclair win in LFA, but outside of that, he's been gifted some cans, and he faces Melsick, who showed us last weekend he might not be the best prospect, but Melsick did enough to completely whoop his ass. I think Sean's shown us enough, even in his kind of choppy UFC career, that he's going to get the finish here. We move on to the welterweight division, where we see Miguel Baeza versus Khaos Williams. For me, it's pretty clear. Baeza has the cleaner striking, the better ground game, and as we've seen in most of his UFC performances, he likes to showcase his boxing, but he does have that BJJ black belt to fall back on. The only thing that really stops me from playing him hard here is that he's a little bit chinny, and Khaos has that death touch. We've seen Baeza caught on multiple occasions, whether he's been saved by the bell in that Ponzinibbio fight or able to clinch up and get his wits back to him, like in that Matt Brown fight. Khaos, on the other hand, still hasn't really earned my respect as a fighter. He's 4-1 with a couple of flash KOs and some lackluster decisions. I could admit that Pereira fight was pretty close, and Pereira's a decent fighter. But I honestly think that Baeza is going to be able to, shoot a couple takedowns and keep Khaos honest and possibly secure these rounds. My best lean on this fight is playing Baeza by decision only. Khaos definitely has the finishing upside, and Khaos himself is pretty fucking durable. If Khaos can't land that big shot, I think that it's very likely that we see Baeza just kind of outclass him.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on the Baeza side, and this is honestly one of my absolute favorite fights of the night. I told earlier that this could easily be the co-main event for this type of card here with Baeza. Trains down MMA Masters. He's one of the brighter prospects in the 170 division right now. Beat Victor Reina on Contender Series. We were in Tampa when we watched him finish Hector Aldana with leg strikes. He put Matt Brown away on the feet, which is a tough, the immortal Matt Brown. He puts him away on the feet and then shows us his black belt and takes Takashi Sato down, submits him. But the last time out, he suffers his first professional loss in his career when he takes a pretty significant step up against Ponzinibbio. In the first round, he looked good. He's doing what he does best. He sets everything up off his leg kicks. He loves to chop down the outside of your calf. He'll tear up the inside of the leg, turn you square, land his right hand. But what Ponzinibbio did in that second and third round is he crowded the kicker, and he put him on his back foot to where he wasn't able to use those kicks as much. When he started to have success, and if Khaos is going to have success, that's what he's going to need to do here as well. But you're right, man. Skill for skill, like you said at the beginning, I do favor Miguel Baeza here. I think he's a way more technical boxer, and I think he's going to find himself way more comfortable if the fight does decide it wants to hit the mat. With Khaos, looking online, he was working with Buckley a little bit, so that is something, I guess, to note. That kind of fight's pretty similar to me, a bunch of athleticism. But, man, with Khaos, the first two performances, knocks the guys out in 30 seconds. You really don't get to see much from him. In the Michel Pereira fight, he gets drawn out a little bit. I guess he still looks pretty good. But to me, he's still kind of TKO or bust, And in the Semmelsberger fight, Semmelsberger looks good and knocked out Martin Sano. But 2 years ago, Semmelsberger is getting finished by 0-0 fighters, submitted by 3-4 fighters. So a win over Semmelsberger, it doesn't hold a whole lot of weight in my opinion.
Speaking of 0-0 fighters, it was only 3 years ago that Khaos was getting decisioned
by an 0-0 fighter. Yeah. I really like Miguel Baeza here. I'm probably not gonna. His minus 137, I think, is the best line you can get out right now, and it's one of the few spots that I've hit pretty heavy on this card. But the decision only, man, I don't hate that whatsoever. Khaos is shown to be a pretty durable guy. And yeah, his one path to victory is by TKO, which would give us our money back. That's the one thing that lead me into, if you're on the Khaos side, I think you should just play the TKO prop. I don't think he stands winning a chance here, but I'm going to have Miguel Baeza's side.
I couldn't agree more.
Next up, we're in the flyweight division where we have Cynthia Calvillo, who is 9-3-1, taking on Andrea Lee, who is 12-5. We got the casual cap on the line here with this one. With Cynthia Calvillo, she's out of Extreme Couture, looks to be training alongside Miesha Tate, Casey O'Neill, Cheyenne Baez, or whatever it is anymore. This line here, man, it's I think it's a little bit of recency bias. I know Cynthia is becoming a little bit of the slight favorite, but I think she should be a little bit bigger of a favorite here, in my opinion. She got steamrolled by Jessica Andrade last time out, so a lot of people aren't really high on her right now, and a lot of people are high on KGB Lee for going out there and taking down and submitting Antonina Shevchenko, which I literally said was going to happen in that fight. Calvillo is much better suited for 115. She needs to get the proper nutritionist. She needs to be able to make that weight. She struggles, I guess you could say, to kind of get the fight down to the mat, but her jiu-jitsu is very good, and on the feet, I guess, I'll be the first to admit her volume's kind of low, and there's not a whole lot to love. But she was just sitting there trying to strike with Ukagi and Andrade. That's pretty high-level competition to be out there with. Andrea Lee, she does have her home gym in Louisiana, but looking online, she looks like she traveled to Texas some, working with Montana De La Rosa. Looks like she went to Michigan, working with Miranda Maverick some as well. And before the Antonina fight, she was working with Tisha Torres and Aspen Ladd. So it does look like she's traveling to get the work in, which is something that you like to see. The odds makers, man, they are, they can never get Andrea Lee right. When you look down through the books, she comes in as the minus 250 to JoJo Calderwood and drops that fight. She comes in as the minus 300 to Lauren Murphy and drops that fight. And then as the minus 300 to Roxanne Modafferi, who had already beaten her previously again. And, you almost got Pick'ems versus Antonina, who was the worst of all of those, which was pretty heavily why I was on Lee here. But with Cynthia, Lauren Murphy, JoJo Calderwood, they were straw weights, a couple fights before going up to, the flyweight too. So I'm not counting Cynthia out here, man. I really like her.
Yeah, so I'm pumped for this one. At first I was with you on Calvillo's side, but I'm leaning towards Lee here. My track record on betting Lee's pretty shaky, but I think we're going to see a clear size and strength advantage for Lee here. Calvillo is one of those girls who at 115 used to impose her will on her opponents, leaning more heavily on her grappling and then using that that grappling to kind of set up her strikes on the feet. Where, like you said, now at flyweight, she's become much more of a striker. She's now 1-2. And to be fair, thrown into the wolves of the division. First she beats who's 1-4 in her last 5. And everybody thinks that Calvillo is now a top contender for the division. And then you start to see her face those upper echelon, and you see far less grappling, far more weaknesses in her ground game. And, I look back at her weigh-ins with Jessica Andrade at UFC 266, and they're eye to eye, man. The only reason why Jessica can get away with being that small at that weight class is because she's built like an absolute tank, where Calvillo, on the other hand, she's still built like a woman, like she's halfway attractive in her build. Another factor that makes me want to fade Calvillo is the fact that she's only 2 months removed from her TKO loss to Andrade. To me, it's a major red flag of a revenge fight for Cynthia Calvillo rather than a good career move. Lee will likely have the power and strength advantage, which I think she'll be able to utilize to get the fight where she wants it, whether it be just grinding her up against the fence or taking it to the mat. Calvillo, like I said, just at this upper weight class, I think that she's had to change up her game, and it hasn't worked out for the best. We talked about Calvillo being thrown against the wolves. Well, Andrea Lee, the ones that she's dropped, I understand Murphy and Calderwood ex-straw weights, but they are the top 2 in the division at flyweight, and they're splits. She's not getting knocked out by them. And then Roxy, it's kind of like we talked about the Sam Alvey. She does that shit, man. When she's a plus 300, she fights her best fight. I think that this is a really close fight, one that I'm happy to put the casual cap on. I will not be backing Lee this week, but I will be backing her for the casual cap.
I'm a little bit more confident on the Calvillo side. I placed a little bit bet on her before the money started coming in, so I did think I got pick'ems at that. It's watching the Joanne Calderwood, watching the Lauren Murphy fight, watching them land the takedowns on Andrea Lee to earn the split decisions that I think Cynthia is able to maybe squeak out a decision here.
And now for the prelim headliner, we move to the lightweight division, where we see Thiago Moises taking on Joel Alvarez. Alvarez is fucking huge for 155. I'm actually surprised the UFC is even giving him another chance after missing weight by 4 pounds in his last time out. He's kind of known for his quick finishes, all of them coming within 2 rounds, and 16 of those by submission, other 2 by ground and pound. The only time he has gone past that second round, it's a Demir decision loss, and who would have fucking guessed it, man? Alvarez, he's the type of guy that's long enough to keep you on the outside of his strikes and kind of force his opponents to shoot in for takedowns or show openings whenever they enter into his range. And he's one of those guys that will sell out for a submission. And by that, I mean, like, even if it's not sunk in great, he is ripping with all of his might to try and finish that. And, that is somewhat of a concern, knowing that he hasn't had the best success outside of those first 2 rounds. Moises, he's going to be a very difficult guy to tap. He has high-level BJJ, and as a black belt, he's been training since he was a kid. He's had an up-and-down road in the UFC, and also has fallen victim to that Demir decision loss. He's coming off of a tough matchup to Islam, where I guess he performed better than Dan Hooker, but it was relatively one-sided. I think that there's an argument that Moises could be 2-5 in the UFC. The Michael Johnson win, he got bailed out on. The green decision bailed out on, I think. And the line is insanely high for the danger that Alvarez presents. So I'm more than happy to take some stabs at the underdog here.
I'm on Thiago Moises' side here, man. He is one of the most experienced 26-year-olds that really come to date in mind for me. He held the RFA belt. He spent time in LFA as well. I mean, the guy debuted against Benil Dairouge, is now coming off a 5-round main event with Islam. That's legitimately 2 of the top 5 fighters in the best division in the world right now. Yeah, of course. But, goes to the decision with one and goes to round 4 with another one. I know they share the Ismagulov loss, but Bobby Green, Alexander Hernandez, Michael Johnson, he gets bailed out, but man, Michael Johnson's winning every fight until he's just no longer winning the fight. It's just, to me, it's competition that Alvarez has just not seen yet. He trains out of American Top Team. He's a very high-level jiu-jitsu black belt. In the Bobby Green fight, he literally makes Bobby Green switch stances in the first round because of his calf kick. I know Alvarez has got a very good calf kick himself, but Joe Duffy was really having success early with Alvarez using his calf kick. So I think Moises will have a ton of success there. He's got a nice body kick to back you up, and with that jiu-jitsu background, I think we've seen improvements on Moises' hands from, between fights. You really got to see it in the Alexander Hernandez fight, not so much in Islam because he's just put on his back. But Joel, man, he likes to back away with head movement and keep his hands low, and kind of has that tall man defense to an extent. How you started it off, man, fucking huge is an understatement. The guy's 6'3", 77-inch reach for 55.
Misses weight.
He's huge for the division, man, and he does a really good job of keeping you behind that right hand and keeping you behind his kicks. The 3 wins, man, going back and watching them, it's Danilo Bellardo, not even in the UFC anymore. Joe Duffy, the guy is an Irish boxer who was taking like a year and a half between his fights and, decides to shoot a takedown when they're pretty dead even on the feet, kind of some bad fight IQ. And Yakovlev is 3-6 in the UFC and, was kind of getting pieced up a little bit on the outside before shooting, but still, shoots and just, in my opinion, they're giving Alvarez the opportunity for him to lock up his submissions and stuff, where I think Thiago Moises is better on the feet, and if he does give Joel Alvarez that opportunity, the jiu-jitsu background and stuff, I trust him to be safe there. I think if he can, if he gets Joel Alvarez down, he's very active hunting for submissions off his back, striking from his back. But if you can get one guard pass and get him at half guard and lay on him, exhaust him after rounds 2 or 3, you negate a whole lot of those submission attempts. So I'm going to go Thiago Moises by decision. I think he's just a little bit more tested. But yeah, I will agree, man. The line's pretty wide.
Yes, I like that you can agree with that. You talked about Moises' ability to defend the submissions, and that's kind of where I've also looked at taking Alvarez inside the distance as opposed to that submission prop. He does have 2 ground and pound victories, and him being as big as he is, he might be able to positionally hold his own on the ground with Moises and find the finish on the ground, whether it be ground and pound or submissions.
This is another excellent fight. Could be main card potential, but at least it's on our prelim main event.
For sure.
Kicking off the main card, we're in the bantamweight division where we see Song Yadong, who's 17-5-1, taking on Julio Arce, who's 17-4. Song Yadong trains out of Team Alpha Male and pretty much notorious for being gifted some real close decisions. You look at the Stamen, a bit controversial. The Vera, definitely a bit controversial. And he's coming over a split decision win over Casey Kenny last time out. His shots, they just kind of have a whole lot of power to them, man. They hold a lot of weight on the judges' scorecard. He's pretty experienced to be only 23 years old, and he's willing to engage in a fun fight, let his hands go. The guy's taking on a performance bonus in majority of his fights. For the first half of the fight, he moves in and out really well, but the one knock on him was kind of that gas tank. But, the last time out with Casey Kenny was a striking battle for full 3 rounds, and his cardio looked really good. He was still able to sprawl 2 or 3 times in that 3rd round and keep Casey Kenny from taking him down. He threw 111 strikes in round 3, which is the most which was the most out of all 3 rounds by more than 30. So, in a striking battle, Song showed me he can definitely go the full 15 minutes, and I think that's what, Arce is going to give him. He's a Tiger Schulman's guy, Shane Burgos, Mike Trezano, some of his main training partners, and this will be his 2nd time down at bantamweight. He looked phenomenal last time out. He's the first person to ever finish Andre Ewell on the feet. The guy's boxing is super crisp, and he's got a good way of closing distance, not taking a whole lot of damage. To me, this is the hardest fight on the entire card to cap. I personally probably don't have any action on it, but I think Julio Arce is potentially a live dog here, man.
Yeah, so it's really an interesting fight, and like you said, a popular dog from what I've seen online. Arce, known for being a featherweight, but like you said, he's coming back to his true weight class for his 2nd time in the UFC, but this is where he made a lot of his improvements on the regional scene, is at 135. Between the 2 fighters, I think that Song has the higher ceiling, but that being said, a lot of that has to do with him just being 23 years old. Tit for tat, I think right now these guys are very similar in their skill level at this point, which is reflected in the line movement that's getting closer and closer to pick'ems. For me, you talked about Song being the more powerful striker of the 2 and also has that amazing durability, but Arce does have the cleaner, more technically sound boxing. And as we've seen in the past with Arce, the powerful punches of guys like Hakeem Dawodu and Shaman Marias, they often get the nod, and then you accompany that with Yadong's history of getting the nod on the judges' scorecards. I sure as hell wouldn't play either guy here. If I were Arce, I would look to mix in those takedowns like he has in his last few fights, try and build up that lactic acid and the huge muscles of Song Yadong. But this is one where I feel more comfortable playing fight goes the distance at minus 165. I think that both these guys are durable enough, and they've shown that they'll fight for your money. So minus 165 is my lean for the fight as opposed to picking a side here.
Yeah, I really like that play as well.
Moving on, we go to the middleweight division. No, not the middleweight division. This is up at 205 pounds, where we see Roman Dolidze versus Daukaus. Both these guys had opponent changes, so the UFC just kind of scrambled this fight together. And I think they gave us a really good fight, man. It's difficult for me to cap for plenty of reasons. The first one being that both these guys have losses in their past that would point to their opponent winning. And I'll expand on that. Khaos beating Daukaus is probably a very similar game plan that Roman will have to try and beat Daukaus. And then Dolidze's loss to Giles, it's just making Dolidze work is the path to victory. And I could definitely see Daukaus being able to do that. The second thing that gives me worry is Roman's game plan, his IQ level. He's shown time and time again that he's more than willing to give away rounds or fights for that matter just by trying to be a showman, and I don't love that. To me, I think the line is wide, and I definitely give the technical edge to Daukaus here as well as the cardio advantage, but I do feel like this is a trap fight where a lot of people are going to take Roman because they can make a solid argument for him to win, but they're ignoring the fact that it's not somebody that you want to lay your money on. Instead of taking a stab on Roman's money line, the D-Gen in me wants to beef it up, take that Roman by decision at plus 350, but to be a little bit more conservative, I think the best line out there is Roman Dolidze by decision only at plus 200. I think that he definitely could get finished by Kyle in that third round, but I do think that he'll probably get the takedowns and hold him there long enough to edge out the judges' scorecards.
I honestly love the decision only at plus 200 because I was kind of could see the potential in taking a dog shot on Dolidze here, and potentially because Kyle could give him the fight that he wants here, and looking online, if this one is at 205, it kind of wouldn't shock me because both of them are kind of accepting, opponent changes on short notice. And Roman is the true light heavyweight of the two. So that would be nice if it was at 205, but I did look at Tapology and it still says 185. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But I don't know if it's really going to change my argument much here with Roman. He's part of the Georgian wave, trains out of Extreme Couture. Was originally supposed to be taking on Eric Anders in this spot and was a pretty significant favorite in there one. With Roman, he's a guy that you and I have backed quite a few times, and come out on the right side of it. Also on the wrong side of it, we cashed on his KO, pretty easily in his first fight. And then on John Allen fight, like you said, it was a split and he made it a whole lot closer than it should be. But I know we got that one. And then in the Trevin Giles fight, I remember Trevin Giles' head literally dropping because he didn't think he won that fight. But then again, it goes back to Roman's poor fight IQ and not leaving it basically too close than it needs to be. And then last time out against Starpoli, it was an absolute shit fight. There's 23 significant strikes landed in the entire fight between the two. But Roman does what he does best, and he puts you up against the cage and he puts you on the mat and he takes the strengths away from you. And watching that fight and then watching short-ass Phil Halls being able to put Kyle Daukaus up against the fence and stuff and be able to control him there, man, Roman does kind of entice me a little bit. He, with Kyle though, he's a BJJ black belt. If it does hit the mat, I think he's going to be able to hold his own. And he's one of those guys that, he lost his debut, but his stock just went through the roof for losing it. He showed his heart, showed his durability, and showed he has a ton of potential. And then the next time out, he shows that he's working on his striking too. He's a long, rangy southpaw, nice stiff jab, straight left down the middle. But man, yeah, I just see a whole lot of grappling being in this fight, and Roman is very much comfortable in those situations. I think he's going to be a whole lot stronger of the two when they do link up, and that decision only at plus 200 I think is a very good play. Next up, we're in the women's featherweight division where we see Felicia Spencer, who's 8-3, taking on Leah Letson, who's 5-1. And I have no clue why this fight is even on the main card, much less this high up on the card in general. with Felicia Spencer, she pretty much came into the UFC as kind of like a filler for the for the featherweight division, and she ends up upsetting Megan Anderson out the gate, submitting her in round 1, and in her next 2 fights, she has to fight Cyborg and Amanda Nunes, but she took them both to decision, man. She showed that she's got a ton of heart, and other than that, she doesn't have much. Her boxing is very, very limited. You saw her kind of get beat up on the feet by Norma Dumont last time out, and other than getting her big ass on top of you and looking for the rear naked choke, Felicia Spencer does not have a whole lot to offer. But good thing Leah Letson does not either, man. She is on like a massive layoff, I think, of 3 years now. She's from the tough season where it was up at featherweight, and every girl since then, even the winner, Macy Chason, they're all down at 135. And at this stage in her career, I just don't know if Leah Letson can make 135 anymore. Felicia Spencer is probably going to get her down. I like Felicia Spencer by decision, probably. But hey, she could get on top and sub her because she's subbed a whole lot of girls in her past.
Yeah, I think she gets her big ass on top of her and submits her, man. Like you said, this 145-pound division, it's kind of, 1-800-GAMBLER if you're betting on it in general. But, that 3-year layoff, that doesn't bode well with me, man. Spencer, I think, she's an inch shorter height-wise, but I think Spencer's going to have a significant size advantage here. Letson, she's fought as low as flyweight in her career, where, on the other hand, Felicia's fought at 155 plenty of times in her career. And, I think that the fights that we're looking at to show that Spencer's had difficulty getting it to the mat, it's kind of like tough to draw from
right.
that. People were sleeping on Dumont until she whooped up on Ladd, and if that wouldn't have happened, I think that's a loss that people would have looked at as a shitty loss on Felicia's record. Then obviously I don't have to explain the Nunes or the Cyborg one, but of course Spencer isn't going to get the fights to the mat like she needs it to. I think that Letson has some pretty reckless entries, especially when she's striking, and that'll allow Felicia to kind of create a trip or even a scramble where she winds up in the dominant position. And once it is on the mat, I do see Felicia kind of utilizing that strength and size advantage. And I like Felicia inside the distance at plus 210, or even the fight doesn't go the distance, which covers both sides, and it's still sitting at plus money. I think that those are the sides that I like.
I don't know if I have any action on such a low level fight. I think Spencer takes this one, or submission props like plus 330. So if I DGen stab, it could be on something like that.
We move on to the co-main event of the evening, where we see Big Ben Rothwell taking on Marcos Rogerio de Lima. It's kind of incredible that the UFC has chosen this to be our co-main, but
you'd think they would have learned. Yeah,
here we are, man. Rothwell is coming off a second-round Gilly over Chris Barnett, who apparently is a fighter that can get wins in the UFC.
Who would have thought?
But Rothwell's career is definitely on a downward trend. He's 40 years old, slower than I've ever seen him. And it's obviously no secret how he fights. He looks to impose that big body and to wear you out and hope that you give up at some point. Both guys have questionable cardio, but I guess I'll give the advantage to Rothwell. So I understand why people are kind of leaning towards him. De Lima, he's training at American Top Team and looks like he's been getting in some good training at the gym, which is a whole lot more than I can say for the sleep-deprived garage training that the new dad, Ben Rothwell, has been getting. I think the finishing upside is on the De Lima side. He has incredibly hard low kicks and packs some decent power, but the only issue with that is Rothwell hasn't been finished since 2009. So at this point in Rothwell's career, I kind of look at him as somebody who's fighting more for a check than fighting for a title. And once that mentality is changed from a fighter, unless I see a clear mismatch, I don't want to bet on him. For this one, I'm not chomping at the bit to bet on it, but the ways that I like it is De Lima by finish only, sitting at plus 100. And if that doesn't happen, I think that the fight goes the distance, and that's sitting at plus money as well. So those are two ways that I like to play it, but again, not one that I'm like super happy to bet on.
I'm not chomping at the bit to play this fight, honestly, by no means. This is about as low level as fucking John Vellante and was last week. With Ben Rothwell, you talked about his training right now. Saw he had a new kid and shit as well, and he's owned his own gym in Wisconsin forever. And it's like, to me, it is no shock as to you've seen this guy make zero improvements throughout his decade of being in the UFC. He's become super slow, just plots forward, looks to use that size like you talked about to cut you off, to cut the cage off, force you up against the fence. And, that's where he will let his hands go. He's got a big right hand, a nice little short uppercut. Likes to just hold you up against the fence and maybe look for some type of front choke of his own. You talked about him not being finished since 2009 by prime Cain Velasquez. The guy is durable as fuck, but he is going to be at a massive, massive speed advantage at least for round one. And man, DeLima is going to be slinging those hooks in there. He's going to sling that calf kick in there, and it's going to cause Ben Rothwell some trouble. It really is. He's got a decent underrated ground game, and if both of these guys are tired, he could potentially find himself on top. But so could Ben Rothwell, man. I think I lean Ben Rothwell. He's fought the better competition, but he is getting older, and at minus 150, minus 160, I'm really not interested in betting that line whatsoever. But what I am interested in betting at is Rogerio. He's going to come out swinging in round one, and I think you really do potentially get a much better line on Ben Rothwell live, like you would like Chito Vera last week or something. I think Ben Rothwell has to survive an early storm, potentially, if he's going to win, break DeLima in round 2 or 3. So I'm looking to potentially live bet Rothwell after round one. But yeah, as of right now, no action from me. In our main event of the evening, we have Max Holloway, who's 22-6, taking on Yair Rodriguez, who's 13-2. Big fight in the featherweight division here, and Max is my boy, man. Got to see him fight live. Huge fan of this guy, and just kind of like last week's main event, I truly think Max and Volkanovski stand alone at the top of that division. I think they have proved more than once, that any given night, either one of those guys can be the top person in that division. He averages over 7 strikes per minute, which is unreal. You saw in the last fight with Cater, he threw over 700 strikes and landed 450 of them, which is just flat out unreal. He's just got the perfect way of keeping you right on the tail end of his punches. He talked about his granite chin that he has, never being knocked down. And he's not had a 3-round fight in over 5 years. His gas tank is flat out, unreal, man. I rewatched Yair versus Korean Zombie this week, and watching Korean Zombie, who is a primary boxer who doesn't have the speed or the range that Max Holloway has, land over 120 significant strikes on Yair, and literally was 1 second from winning that fight. Max is going to have those openings. Max has double the volume. I do favor Max here. But with Yair, especially at this price tag, Max is going to strike with him, man. And if there's anybody that can pull off some crazy ass spinning shit or something, or elbow with 1 second, it's Yair Rodriguez. He's got the Taekwondo background. So yeah, the style of fight Max is going to give him is the only style of fight Yair Rodriguez thrives in. So I'm not happy that Max Holloway is a minus 700 favorite. Makes me enticed to play Yair, but I'm never going to go against my boy. I think Max Holloway takes this one. Probably finishes him in the championship rounds.
So, we've been on a little cold streak when it comes to the main event. So what I'm about to say, we're probably not going to pull the trigger on. But, I think this is another situation like the Islam hooker where I can't help but take a little stab on Rodriguez here. This is a fight where at least the 500 plus 500 favorite is fighting in his preferred area of MMA, like you said. It could be another mauling like that Cater fight, but we're not getting a minus 160 price tag on Max Holloway this time around. And to even further break that down, I don't think it's as simple as striker versus striker like the Cater Holloway fight was. Cater's a primary boxer where Yair is going to prefer to keep this at kicking range. That kind of poses a new challenge to Max where he'll have to be the aggressor just to get inside the range of Yair's kicks. Now, do I think that's going to be difficult for Max? No, I don't. But
we saw Volkanovski land a bunch of calf kicks.
Yeah, for sure. And then, anytime somebody's the aggressor on Yair, he's got such a diverse arsenal of kicks that come at you with lightning speed. Yeah. I think he has the type of style that could catch anyone on any given night. I don't know if people have looked at on Instagram or heard that Yair Rodriguez has dipped out on all 3 of his USADA tests this year, but Yair Rodriguez is on the juice right now. I truly, truly believe it. The longer this fight goes, I think it favors Max. It's just his sheer volume will likely rack up points and make it easy for the judges to score the fight for them. But for that reason alone, I want to play Rodriguez inside the distance as opposed to the straight side, because I don't think that he outpoints him to victory. Max wins this fight 75-80% of the time. But those minus 350 price tags are gone, so you have to look at this from a different angle. And as much as I'll probably just lay off, I really like Yair inside the distance for a 0.1 unit stab just to win some lunch money.
Yeah, it is very tempting. With Yair, I don't like the mental side, man. You know, he's broken his ankle to avoid Zabit twice now.
I'd break my ankle to avoid Zabit too.
And I come back to I think Max is going to break him in those championship rounds. I saw him, be real tough and survive to the last second with Korean Zombie,
and still have that fight-ending power.
Have the fight-ending power, but like I said, man, I think Max has proven any day of the week he can be the top featherweight in that division, and there is a gap between, Holloway and Volk and the rest of that division. So, with Max being so high, if you put him in parlays and the night goes well for you, you have the opportunity to hedge out at the end of the night. But
how much was a minus 700 beefing up your parlay?
Not
to begin
very
with?
Much whatsoever. So I'm probably not going to have any action on it, but all the value is 100% on Yair. That concludes all 12 fights in UFC Vegas 42. As always, going to do a little recap. We got the casual cap on the line in the women's flyweight division for Cynthia Calvillo and Andrea Lee. Closely aligned fight, probably going to go to decision, the ones we like the best. But man, if there is a fight throughout the whole thing that stands out to you, what's the one people need to pay attention to?
It's the Moises Alvarez fight, man. I think that this is a great fight to have Joel Alvarez's breakout party, kind of his step out and kind of put himself in the front line as a real contender in the 155 division.
Man, it's a great fight, and it's only top 15 if he gets to that one. For me, it's Baeza versus Khaos Williams. Can't believe that's the 5th fight on the card, man. I truly think it could be co-main event. Khaos always brings a dogfight, and Baeza's been in a couple already himself with Brown and Ponzinibbio. I think that one's going to be fireworks. For me, I'm going to steal your fighter to watch, or my fighter to watch is going to be from your fight, and Thiago Moises. He's coming off a 5-round main event with Islam Makhachev. It's one of the sleepers in the division and is climbing his way through. And now Thiago Moises is, instead of taking on a legit contender, now he's got to take on, a prospect that's climbing through. And although he is a big favorite, I think he needs to prove himself in this one, So I think he's my fighter to watch.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. He definitely, if he covers that price tag, I think that he'll get right back into the mix of that top of the division. But yeah, there is a lot of pressure on him. I think that there's a lot of pressure on Woodson, which is my fighter to watch. Woodson's somebody who's made a lot of fights way too close in the UFC. And he's finally given an opponent right here that I think that he can absolutely exploit the holes in his game and earn that UFC finish that he's really been needing to kind of set himself apart from the other 135ers.
I like that as well, man. What about an underdog for you?
So underdog, it's going to be the Alvarez fight.
I like it.
So he's a big underdog, wide line, and beefing it up by taking him inside the distance because I don't think that dude goes past 2 rounds.
I feel you. The line is definitely closing, but you can snag Julio Arce at plus money right now. He was a featherweight for the longest time, wins over Dan Ige and stuff, and he looked phenomenal last time out. It does worry me betting against Song if it goes to the scorecards, but I think Julio Arce is just the cleaner striker of the two, and I think there's potential for a dog to cash there. For my prop bet, I'm going to steal our Dolidze decision only at plus 200. I think that's killer. I don't see a whole lot of finishing upside for him. Daukaus proved even in the Brendan Allen fight that he is tough as nails and can fight a guy off his back for a majority of a round. Whereas Dolidze, the cardio, it is a bit worrisome, and if he does get finished, it could be late. We get our money back, units back that way. Dolidze decision only plus 200 is killer, man.
Love that. My prop bet of the night is going to be Woodson inside the distance. Like I said, there's holes in Anglin's game, and Woodson will finally find that finish.
Yeah. One prop that I did want to mention, I know it is against Thiago Moises, but what is Alvarez submitted 16 of his 18 wins, and his sub prop is plus 750. That's a DGN one. You got to, you know.
I see. I'm more on that inside the distance line. We talked about Moises
Right.
BJJ. He could fiend off those
For sure.
those submission attempts, and I like the inside the distance. If we don't get greedy, plus 450 is also crazy.
That
value.
is pretty crazy. What about your best bet of the night?
Best bet of the night, Marc Diakiese, man. I think he's kind of getting slept on. You look at the level of competition that he's faced, and this is this line is way too close for what we've seen from Diakiese.
I know we completely disagree, but my best bet was going to be Cynthia Calvillo. But the more I think about it, going to be Jung, man, to be honest with you. First fight of the night. I think Jung's got Kennedy covered everywhere, and I don't think he's going to gas like Kennedy's last 2 or 3 opponents and let him take over late. So I'm actually going to change that to Jung. Pretty confident pick there.
I like it.
Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hop in the comments. Let us know how you guys have in the main event. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.